Welcome to the channel. I'm David Poe. Glad you could join us for this painting demonstration. Today we're going to start with an 11 by 14 panel. This is a canvas panel. Our colors today on the palette consist of primary yellow, pyrrole red, ultramarine blue, titanium white, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and ivory black. Our medium today is Cobra Quick Drying Medium number 93. And all of the colors that we're using today are Cobra water mixable oils. Clean up a little bit of the oil that's coming out of the tube on some of these colors, and then we will get started today. We're going to be looking at this lake view that you see at the bottom of the screen today. Oops, a couple of these paper towels on here. Paper towels I'm just using Viva, I think is the name of this brand. You could also use Bounty or shop towels would work well. The brushes I'm using today, one bright, one flat, a couple of filberts. These are roughly in the range of 8s and 6s in terms of sizing. Across different brands, sizing can be different and the numbers that they use are different. So always you can always have to kind of check and see what works for you. And of course those are numbered to give you an approximate size of the brush. All right, so we're going to begin today with a sketch and do or what we might call an underpainting. And get some water on over our canvas here, and we're going to use some burnt sienna. We want this to be a very thin layer of paint, so I'm mixing in water to get us started. Of course, like I said, this is water mixable oil, so that makes sense. Get a little bit more water in here. All right, and I'm looking at the reference photo. Got a little bit of the shoreline over in this corner, wrapping around like there. And we've got, got some ridge of some tree line back here. Goes all the way over this way. Also got some a tree limb coming up from over here. So I just want to kind of mark where that overhang is. I think it sort of adds to the painting. Here's the shoreline over in this direction. And over this way. All right. Now we're going to add in some ultramarine blue into that burnt sienna. This is going to be our dark. Wipe off some more of that oil that keeps dripping off of there. All right, so we're going to use this dark color. I'm going to add a little bit of water to that mixture. And our darkest darks, of course, are over here. This is going in very lightly, so that way I can cover it up later on. And right about here, is where the tree line stops. Over here, same thing. Darker by the edge here. Want to make sure that it's a pretty thin mixture. That will help it to attach, dry a little bit quicker. So that way when we come back over it with some thicker paint, it will take. This is what I call the sloppy time of a painting, because it may not look quite done here at this point. And this part's the farthest away, so what I'm going to do is add a little bit of the titanium white into our mixture here to represent that that subtle value change. Because these are vertical objects, I try to start with some vertical strokes, varying it a little bit, but not too much. Okay, and then going back to that darkest dark again over here a little bit in this corner, we have another dark shape. This is the part of the beach that is visible to us. Right. And of course, all in here is going to be our lake color. So this lake color is relatively dark in context to that. So we will start by laying in the dark color, but we want it to also be warm. So we're going to start with yellow ochre and some burnt sienna. And make a little bit of ultramarine blue. Give that a little bit more of a greenish tone as I add a little bit more of that yellow ochre into it. And some water. Add a little bit more of that ultramarine blue. Let's try and see what that looks like. Ooh, I think that's very close to one of the colors that I want. So we're going to go ahead. And because this is water, I like to use vertical strokes in the background. And then I will use, horizontal strokes, what am I saying? And then vertical ones as the water comes closer to us. Focusing now on where the darkest areas of the water are, which are the areas that we see the most green. More water. And we certainly see it over here. Right up against the shoreline here. And then kind of breaks up as it goes to the center area. Right. And we're going to turn this a little bluer. A little bit more of the yellow ochre into that mix. A little bit more of the blue. Touch of the titanium white. And even a touch of the payroll red. As we make a kind of a purpley blue is what I'm after here. Let's put a little white in there so we can see it a little bit better. And I think that's about what I want. And because it's black, we're going to add some water. We want this to be thin at this point. This dark color is down here. Shadow from a tree from the beach that we do not see. So I'm going to use this very dark color here. This is the base. We're just trying to get close to the color. Doesn't have to be perfect at this point in time. This gives us a base to start with, and then we can modify it. And of course, because it's dark and because it's the underpainting, I want this to be relatively thin. Kind of goes all the way over here, and then there we go. Over here, same way. Also see that dark color. Over here. Right. Now, using that same pool of color, I'm going to bump up the blue with the ultramarine. Mix that in, add some titanium white. That produces a grayish blue. Add a little pyrrole red. I want it to be a little bit on the purple side. A little bit more titanium white. Pyrrole. And some more blue. All right, I think that's what I want. Let's put it on there and see. A little bit whiter. Adding some more titanium white. oceans. As we get closer to the shoreline. Want to kind of overlap the colors here, not being too... Don't really want to be too careful here. Over here I see a few areas I didn't get covered. So I'm just going to kind of go back in with this color. And now back to this main area here. All using vertical strokes, varying the brush stroke just a little bit. Let's add a little bit more water. Come over here, cover the canvas. Don't want any white showing after we're done with the underpainting. Continuing to work on this. Now might be a good time, as I always forget to do this, but if you like the content of these paintings, these demonstrations, really help me out a lot if you would subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up. So over here, you know, this is the shoreline. So this purpley color looks good as an underpainting, I think. The more you paint, the more you'll get a sense of what you can get away with and what you might want to attempt to do. But you have to spend the time painting. Add some titanium white, want a little bit lighter color back here. All right. So that looks like pretty good for me. Now we're going to do the sky, which tonal value has got to be the lightest. So take and clean off this brush real quick. You can do that not by using a bunch of water, but just pull it off of your brush like this. And because it is a purpley color, and I think I want to use it for the sky, this brush, I'm going to go ahead and clean it better with the canister of water. Or if you're using conventional oils today, that would be your mineral spirits. All these colors are available in various brands, and you don't necessarily have to use water mixable oils. I've got a small studio, and so it helps me. I get a little sensitive even to mineral spirits if I'm working with it for a long time. So with these, it's relatively, you know, there's no fumes coming from any of this. And I'm not using any paints that have any metals in them. So this is about as safe as you can possibly be and paint. So boy, that we got a lot of oil just running off of this. Sometimes you get that from newer tubes. The oil just kind of settles at the top of the tube and wants to go everywhere. All right, another paper towel here. So we're going to make a new little pile over here. So we're going to take some titanium white. And I want it to be warmer, so I'm going to take some of the yellow ochre and I'm going to mix that in lightly. And think of this as the sun shining up in the sky, and it's a warm white. So a little bit of change in color, but not much. And then what we're going for is a warm underpainting, which will help facilitate some brighter colors on top of this. I'll get in underneath there. So we're taking these. And dipping in some water, because once again, this doesn't need to be a thick application. It needs to be rather thin. You can get close to your mountain range at this time. You can also go over it a little bit if you want to, but I get relatively close, but not all the way. So that way, if I need to make some refinements, it makes it a little easier to do, and the sky color remains a little bit less polluted with other colors this way. Yeah, picked up a color from the water, I think. Go up there and get my color in there. Now this is just a placeholder for where I'm envisioning a tree to come through, so I'm going to sort of cover some of that up. It's just a road map at this point. I don't know that we'll keep any of that brown. A little bit more white water on there. Make sure that most of that white's all covered up. Go back here. Get a little closer to these tree line. Okay, so now the underpainting is all done, and these are relatively non-powerful colors, as you can see, and that's what I like doing, is making sure that it's kind of the color that we're looking for, that it's the darks, and that way we got room to make various color adjustments over top of this initial layer. That should be relatively exciting. All right, so clean off that brush, and now it's time, since we've got the underpainting done, I like to take and stop for a second. And we're going to now scrape our palette off to get ready for the second layer. In the second layer, what I'm thinking about most often is the primary variation or contrast that I see. Not highlights, but certainly a contrast color. Usually it's a little lighter, usually it's a little darker in certain areas. And then I'm going to come in with those. So there's essentially 3 layers of paint. The second layer is going to be that contrast, and then the highest contrast is what I call the highlights, which will be the last pass over the areas. And we call this alla prima painting because we're painting all at once. I'm not going to let this dry and then come back tomorrow and go over it. Another paper towel. So first off, select the brush here. I'm going to go with this one. This is a flat brush, probably a number 6. And we're going to create a dark green. It's best to start with the darks first. So we're going to put some in a pool right here. Hopefully you can see that. We'll make sure there's enough paint. And then I'm going to add some of the yellow primary. And because this is going to be dark, we're going to add some of the Pyro Red as well. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. And this, to me, makes an even darker color. And one that I believe is more natural to the landscape. And it may actually look almost black to you on the screen. But that's all right. Like I said, we need some darks to render the highlights and so forth. So, okay. Now, I also will use a little bit of water just to get the paint to flow a little bit better. Okay, and I'm looking at my reference photo at where the darkest darks are. I want some of the browns to hang around. So I'm thinking about that as I apply this layer of paint. And you want to connect your darks. Now I'm looking over here at where my darkest darks are. Most of my strokes are going to be vertical because these shapes are on the vertical plane. Now when I come back with highlights, I'll switch up the strokes to be more horizontal. Just to give it a little bit more variety and excitement. Not really pushing down the paint very hard. I'm letting some of the brown show through in doing this. All right, I'm conscious of this area that I want to recede back more into the background. I see some of the black, darker color right up here on the shoreline where there's some shadows coming from a tree that's not going to be painted. So we're going to lay some of that in right now. Okay. Now, the shoreline itself is usually rather dark. And so now I'm going to put that in over here with some horizontal strokes. Do that one more time with the pass of color. There we go. And then I'm going to pull some of that down a little bit, as it's a shadow, the reflection of this darker area is what I'm actually doing in the water. And there's some of it over on this one, but it's out a little bit away from the shoreline. So I'm going to leave some of that brown there. All right. And then I'm looking in the water to see if there's any other places where there's a darker cast shadow. Not cast shadow, rather, but just a darker reflection. There's some over here that's actually coming from this tree. So we're going to put that in there at this time. pull it down like that. A couple more marks. There we go. And then there's this big shadow coming from a tree that is out of our vision. So we're going to darken some spots along here. A little bit of water to get the paint flowing. All right, there we go. So now we've reestablished those darks. And now for back here, we're going to put a little titanium white in here. And we want it to be a different tonal value. So let's see if that's pretty good. It's a little blue. I like that. Picks up the color here. Add just a little bit more titanium white. Run that up towards the skyline. And down from there. Got the dogs with me today, of course. There we go. And see how that sits back further because of the tonal value. If you squint, you can now see it. Now, one thing I forgot to do was I should use that same dark tone for some of the tree there. So I'm going to clean up my brush. I don't want the titanium white on there. And I'm going to make another pool of that dark color while I've got it. Or I could use it actually to come in after the sky. I could save it for almost last. But usually darks over lights is better, so I think we're just going to go ahead. So here we go. Remembering my mixture, so ultramarine blue over here. Yellow ochre. A little bit of pyrrole red. And that's about the shade I want because I want it a little bit greener because it's closer to us. Let's work on that a little bit. Okay. Just going to kind of drag this across here. Hopefully I got to make sure I got enough paint on my brush. I don't want to disturb too much of that white or it will do a number on this light. Make this too light, so we don't want that. I'm not trying to paint leaves at this point. I'm looking at the shapes. So I'm trying to convey a sense of these shapes. Looking to connect some of those. And one here. And then leave it alone. And then we'll go back with some more details later on in the painting. But now we got all the elements there. What do you think? So we're about a half an hour in, and we've got basically that second layer of paint in there with the darks. And now we're going in with some lighter colors. So another time that we can stop for a second, clean off our brushes, and I'm going to clean off this palette. Get it different. Scrape it with my palette knife. Get rid of that paint. So now we're going to start with a lighter green is what I want to do. So lighter green. See if we can get that going. I wonder if this shows up better if I turn that. Oh, I will leave that on. The light's dimming right now. Outside I'm talking about, so we'll see. All right, so now we're going to take our ultramarine blue and we're going to make a pretty good sized pile here of it. We're going to take the primary yellow, mix that in. Much more of that. I probably started with too much of the blue. One of the keys here, though, is that we don't want a radical shift in color. We want it to be rather subtle, otherwise it would be highlights, right? So as I look at that, I think it's still a little too dark. Add some more of the yellow. So it's, I think that's what I'm going for. That's a rich green, but it's certainly not a highlight. We'll stick with that. Let's clean up my palette knife. Pull another brush. I'll use this one. This one I've been using for my darks, so you see that it's dark. And I can put that into my green. And we're going to start over here. So what I'm kind of looking at is trying to fill in places without covering up too much of my darkest dark. Vary some of these strokes a bit. to put a reasonable amount of paint on here too. Okay. Now we're going to do the same side over here. Now, a few strokes of this same color are going to be reflected down here. Just a couple of there we go. All right. Of course, back here, the green is going to be much dulled down. So we're going to take some ultramarine, some titanium white rather, and we're going to put that into the green until it's about the same tonal value. Now let's test it. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I'm going to use this color. Just kind of suggest where there are trees that are receiving some sunlight. I don't want to destroy all of that purple, but I don't want all of that purple to show through either. There we go. Just a hint of color on that section there. So in the photograph, it's not as clear. Those look a lot much closer, but I think for our purposes, I want to exaggerate it, and so that's why I'm going in with that color. All right, now time to clean that brush off a little bit. I don't want that much titanium white in there. Also looking as I'm stopping to see if there's some places where there's some more of that green color. And I think I found another spot to put it. Right here in between some of the shadows, we have some green. Not much, but a little bit. Put that in there. All right. Now clean this off. And now for a lighter green to give us some more highlights, if you will, in these tree sections back here, these two right there. We're going to concentrate on. Let's start with our yellow primary color. Check on the video, make sure we're doing all right here on time. We'll create that right next to our pool of color. Just going to take a little bit of that green into here. And a little bit of that pyro red. And check the monitor. This looks close. So let's see how it looks over here. Just barely touching parts of it. Let's keep going with this color. The very top, the sun is shining up. So I'm allowing that to mix into that darker color. And then kind of all the way down here, I see little, add some more yellow to that mixture. Just barely touching that canvas to suggest where light might be hitting some of that foliage in those trees. Playing off of the back dark that we find. Okay. And some of the same color is over here. Just touching the edges a little bit. No need to go in there and try to paint individual leaves. Just touch the canvas. And there's a few places below the top of that portion that are getting some, but they're actually yellower. So we're gonna pump up the yellow here. Add a little bit of titanium white to do that as well. There we go. And now these might be considered our lightest lights on this area at least. See it right around here in the reference photo. Extending here a little. And then there's some of that color over here. And a few up there. All right. That same color. I'm going to pop in over here a little bit. Seems like there's a mass right in that area. And right along here. And right along here. And of course, this color is going to be reflected a little bit in the water. So we're going to take and put a few little brush strokes here. Just kind of take and push them down a little bit. Right, they should be in the water. And over here as well. There we go. Nice reflections. And I'm seeing a little bit of a light brown in a few of those trees as well. And I think that would be a nice addition. So I'm going to do that in just a minute as well. And I think we'll start with yellow ochre. and then a little bit of the burnt sienna. And then some titanium white. And we're going to put in a few of those details. See a few right in here. A couple up here. That breaks up that tree line a little bit. And then there's a few right over here. And a couple in here. There we go. And part of the key here is not overdoing some of that. Oh, and then I'm going to put some more titanium white. Some more. And we're going to go in with just a couple of little spots back here. So obviously if we've got some trees that have some brown leaves in front, makes sense that there would be some back there, right? A little bit there. There we go. All right. And next, I'm going to do the same thing with our light green that we put in. Just changing the tonal value. Using, let's get another paper towel ready. Let's see, where are we at? We're about in an hour. Appreciate you watching. Let me take a moment to, again, if you have stayed with me for this long, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that would be awesome. All right, so see this green here, this light green? Take some titanium white, and we're going to lighten it up to the same tonal value. And if I squint, yep, that's about what I want. And there's also some of the light areas over here. Especially thinking about that line up there by the sky. Not a lot, of course, just a few areas. Just barely touching in. Give the suggestion that there's lots of detail back there. Stepping away, I think I like that now. And we're going to stop with that. And before I come in with some lighter greens on this area of this tree hanging in, I think I want to go ahead and get the sky in. So I'm going to use my smallest brush. Well, here we go. Use a little bit bigger brush and create that blue sky. So we're going to take some of that titanium white here, stick it in this space here, some ultramarine blue, starting with just a little bit of it. A little bit darker than that, so let's pop it up a little bit. Okay, we're going to start from the top because this is a little bit darker than I wanted, but we can lighten it up as we go, and as it picks up that underpaint, it'll lighten up naturally anyway. Here we want to make sure that we have plenty of paint. Might want to even put a little of our quick dry medium into that. Get underneath there a little bit. Now here my blue is going to change a lot, so I'm just going to put a few strokes in here. Not too concerned. We'll come over top with the highlights, and that should make it look more believable. And then I can cover up any of my mistakes, you see. All right. This area is not going to be quite as bright anyway. Do a couple strokes, get some more paint. Lay it down and leave it. Now back over here. Check on this. Yep. Just pulling this paint over top of it. Let's go across this tree line a little bit. And now I'm going to cut into it a little bit. I want it to not read so predictable like. Right. Now, some more titanium white. I want to lighten this color up some. Go around that far piece of foliage and trees there. There we go. And undo this tree branch. There we go. Now I'm going to work it into my remaining areas here. And notice, I don't have to use a real small brush in order to do this. All right, taking a step back to judge what I've done, and I'm pretty happy with that. I can always come back in. There's no clouds in my reference photo, but I kind of like putting clouds in, but maybe I think there's probably enough going on in that sky right now that I may be able to get away with not doing that. All right. Now, since I have the blue on my palette, what I'm going to do is take a moment and use this as my highlight color for some of the water areas. I'm going to add a little bit of the titanium blue into it, a little bit of the titanium white rather, and the ultramarine blue. Because it's going to be a little darker than that sky. as it reflects off the water. But I see a little part there. And I see a little part coming in around here. Sort of makes its way coming this way. Around this area here. Pull a few of these strokes down like this. Add some titanium white into this pool. A little bit of ultramarine blue. A little more ultramarine blue. And some more ultramarine blue. So I see some of this rich color in here over top of that purple. And over here as well. Into this area a little bit. All right. Okay. Now over here, we're getting some more of that blue as well. Coming down into this area. Now, some really blue. Really pick up the ultramarine blue and stick it in there. What's happening here is that there is a darker shadow going on, so I don't want to totally obliterate it. I want to give the sense of it. This goes all the way over here. Well, still using the vertical strokes. now I'm going to stand up and take a look and see where we're at. I think we're about done. Okay, it looks pretty good to me. Got a few more details to do. We got the two edges. So we're going to start with the tree edges first up here, and then we'll move to the shoreline. Clean off my brush with my paper towel. And we're going to set this aside. And pick up a smaller brush. We're going to go in with this green again. This is going to be our dark green here. And I'm just kind of painting where I had that outline. And we'll put some highlights on top of it, which will help it read as if there's a lot of detail here, when you and I know that there are just some strokes. I may not have mentioned it, but I live in Washington, Missouri, and I have not been painting all my life. I started before I turned 50 years old to paint as a hobby. I really didn't think I'd be any good. Watched a few videos and started painting. Did some abstracts first to start off with because I was convinced that there was no way I could paint anything that was remotely realistic. So if I can inspire you to think that, well, if this guy can do it, I can do it. I hope that's part of what you get out of this, is that you're never too late. It's never too late to start. And the more you paint, the better you will become at this. All right, and then this light green, I want to use it, so make a little bit more of it by taking the yellow primary over top of it. And we're going to add maybe we won't add anything, maybe just a little bit of that darker green into there. There we go. That looks pretty good. And now we're just going to put a few highlights as if they were some leaves that are flickering. So the key is making sure you got enough paint on your brush to stick. And you're just making one little spot at a time. Think about the sun kind of dancing around here. All right, don't want to get too carried away. And I think that about does it. I'm going to make a few of these kind of disconnected to anything. There we go. And then there's actually some light green over here, just a few dashes. So we're gonna put a couple of those right over here in this corner. Okay. Now, using the same brush, I'm going to mix up a very light brown. You use these colors here, titanium white. I'm actually going to put a little blue into it. A little bit more white. Shoot, I obliterated the brown. Let's stick some more brown in there. There we go. Let's try a little bit of burnt sienna. I can get that color back. I kind of like that. That's the darker color I see on a couple of spots here. So come in here and do this little shoreline. A couple little rocks out here. Too many of them. A few. Okay. And then this color also appears on this shoreline over here. So I'll make this a little bit lighter in those areas by adding some titanium white. There's another one right over here. This one actually extends further. There's a couple little spots. And then there's a little bit of a reflection. Right. And also right up here. Good. Just a hint is all I want there. All right. Sometimes the best painting brush is your finger. Okay. A couple more. A couple of touches for a rock or something out here. There we go. Now I'm going to take a step back, see how that looks. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'll have to see if there's any other. Let's see, there's something right here as well. right, that painting is done. And it's time to sign it. So once again, I want to thank you so much for watching this painting demo. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, since we got this busyness over here, I'm going to sign where normally artists would sign. Just using what they call an eraser. And I think it just, yeah, it did. Just got all that paint all over my shirt. Let's stick this over there for a second. If I get it off of my shirt in time, it won't stain it so much. All right. Put it in there. Okay, let's try this again. All right, this is another view of the Osage River in Jeff City, if you were wondering what this was. First I thought it was a lake, but this is actually the Osage River from my reference photo. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.